Before we begin, subscribe to my YouTube channel and click the bell to be alerted to all my new videos on building a sustainable and fulfilling career, as well as sign up for my free newsletter where I include higher detail articles, link in the description. Regardless of where you are in your career, whether you're brand new or a hardened veteran, you will almost definitely come face to face with imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is an internal belief that you are not as competent as how others perceive you and or that you're a fraud because of a lack of real experience. When you're starting out, you obviously lack an amount of experience, but you put invisible lines on when you become a real game developer or real game audio expert. But in truth, the feeling never really goes away. Let's talk about why. Real quick though, I just want to say I talked a lot about some of these topics in my previous video about promoting yourself, and once again, thanks to Karina Pardis, aka Koi Compositions. Why do we have imposter syndrome? 1. The sum of our network's knowledge. So, not every person has it, and not everyone has it all the time, but people get it for different reasons. It's impossible to know everything, and we're self-consciously comparing ourselves to the best of everyone else. It can be easy to feel like you're being pulled in every direction, but you don't have to know everything, and you don't need to be the best at all of it either. Everyone has different sets of skills and specialties. Sometimes, for me, I'll get self-conscious hearing sound designers talk about implementation, and while I made plans to get better at it, my career pulled me in different directions. But it's better that way, and it's better to home in on one or two things that you're really good at. Having cursory knowledge of other things doesn't make you a fraud, it just means that you're specialized, which is the opposite of being a fraud. You're an expert. Number 2, the post-Dunning-Kruger effect. The Dunning-Kruger effect is the phenomenon of thinking that you know way more than you actually do because you actually don't know how much you don't know. This is mostly seen with reply guys on Twitter trying to correct experts. Thankfully, anyone taking the time to watch these videos is already past that point of being stuck here on Mount Stupid. This graph is a bit extreme, but the valleys of despair actually have a lot of ups and downs. Even people at the top have drops in their self-confidence. You might feel like you're at the pit, but you're very likely much further along than you think, just one of the many valleys near the top not pictured here. Now, the trap is that we don't want to be the overconfident jackwipe who lives on Mount Stupid, but there's a difference between having humility and putting yourself down. The humble trap. No one likes a blowhard who oversells their competence. It comes off as salesy and typically no one is buying. It's important to be humble and to stay grounded, and it's much easier to get along with someone who is. But unfortunately, the humble trap is to overcompensate and downplay your achievements. Being humble is knowing that you are just one of many capable, competent people and that we're all learning and growing. We're not perfect. That's okay. But downplaying your achievements is basically making yourself look worse than you actually are. As I said before, I felt that my award was actually not as particularly a big deal as people made it out to be due to arbitrary circumstances, like how many nominees there were or whatever. But in reality, no one cares. It's still impressive. I asked a room full of composers one time if anyone was nominated or awarded for anything. Most of them were, but they always followed up with, "Oh, but it was for a small film festival," or "No one cares, you have an award." As I talked about in promoting yourself, owning it and acknowledging it, it doesn't make you a conceited person. It's a legitimate fact, and you earned it. And when you own it, it helps boost your self-confidence. Now, we talked about why we have it and different ways of counteracting it, but here are other ways of beating it. Anchors. Speaking of self-confidence, imposter syndrome is in essence a dip in your confidence. Confidence can typically sit on a certain level, but it usually fluctuates up or down on a given day. When it hits me hard, I try and use anchors. An anchor is what I describe as a benchmark of your ability that no one can shake you on. For me, besides networking, I went to music school, and despite that, I actually don't really know or care that much about music theory. But what I do have is sick-ass oral skills, and while I wasn't born with it, I effectively have perfect pitch, because I trained myself for it. I just memorized all 12 notes and I got really good at it. Another thing is when I first started out, before I even had the idea of making this my job, the first team I worked with loved the music that I wrote, and they had no stake in protecting my feelings. People who I didn't know liked my work, and then when I met them later, they told me about how they were a fan of it. Going back to some of my older work, a lot of the mixing is pretty rough, but my musical intuition was and has always been great. What is your anchor? Do you have an ability that you're really confident in? Maybe an achievement you've accomplished. Think about that for a bit. It's okay to add new ones or change the ones that you already have. Framing. This one's a big one. Much like how we talked about in how to promote yourself, your presentation is also important not just for others to trust you, but also for your own self-esteem. Here's the tricky thing. It is so easy to compare yourself to other people. We all grow at different rates, and even just within ourselves, different aspects of you will change and grow at different rates. No matter what, you'll always know someone who has better metrics than you in one form or another, but it doesn't take account into anything such as how long either of you have been doing this or what your paths looked like along the way. It's also a matter of how much weight you put onto things. For example, I think I have a decent following on Twitter, but comparatively, places like Instagram and Spotify are not at equivalent levels. But I also am not nearly as active or promote either of those places as much. For Spotify, I was actually pretty bummed about my Spotify Wrapped for artists. I felt that wasn't all that impressive. But that was a self-imposed perception I put upon myself. For other people, pretty much anything is impressive. I initially posted these stats because I thought they looked more impressive than my actual stats. But if we flip that framing, it's because it is impressive. Comparing myself to myself from last year is infinitely more objective than comparing myself to anyone else. I had quintupled the number of listeners and plays before. That's huge. The number of listeners I have is not as high as I'd like, but the number of plays I have is disproportionately much higher than what you'd expect, which means I have fewer listeners but very dedicated ones. It can feel like that you're lying and hiding behind a smokescreen when you put things in these words, but none of these are lies. As I said before, our brain is tricking us into thinking that we are worse than we are because we are comparing ourselves to the best of everyone else we know, and we will never be close enough. Like, I have friends who have millions of plays, but they've also been doing this a decade longer than me. The only true objective comparison is comparing ourselves to our past selves. You'll find you've grown so much more than you've realized. I won't pretend it's easy to get jealous. You can see other people's numbers and you can be, wow, I wish I had that too. But that jealousy is healthy because it means that you know what you want. Sometimes you have to evaluate, do I want this? And if yes, how do I get that? How do I put the work in to reach that goal? And sometimes when you evaluate, is it worth it? Because sometimes it's not. Jealousy and the evaluation of it is really healthy and it helps you overcome these feelings. You feel less jealous about things because you don't care about them as much anymore. Or if you do care about them, you know where to put your efforts and how to improve it. Within our network, we're going to know a lot of superstars, and it's easy to feel like the company that we keep outshines us. We might think, wow, I wish I was as accomplished as these other people. But the thing is, you actually are. Even if you don't think it, just flip the script. If you ever feel down on yourself, like, wow, I'm trash compared to these people, turn around and say, these people are all very accomplished and I get to be in the company of them. The chances are is that they actually see you more of an equal than you see yourself. And there's actually a very high chance that they also think the same way. And maybe they think how you're cooler or better than them in some way and how they wish they could meet you in that area. Another trick is leaning into it. I don't know what it is about sometimes when you talk good about yourself, you will feel very bad. It can be really uncomfortable trying to brag, but you gotta lean into it. Pushing that barrier of where you're comfortable is how you grow. It's like when you have a plant in a pot, it will only grow out as far as the pot's walls. You have to change the plant into a bigger pot. But when you move the plant into a bigger pot, it will certainly feel small compared to it. But in no time at all, the roots will reach further out and the plant will grow taller and stronger. Acknowledging your ability is a skill of its own and one that you are going to have to develop too. And if you're with other people who are learning and growing, which is basically everyone, you will be supported on your journey of self-improvement. So if you ever feel like the title or the perception people have of you is much greater than what you actually deserve, then lean into it. Do what it takes to match that title and the trust people put into you. The language that we use is actually a big factor as well. Talk with authority and certainty. I am constantly checking myself for this because historically, my language has always left a lot of room for deniability. I've actually had to clean this script up a lot for it. I've always been afraid of being wrong or telling people the wrong thing, but it's okay to be wrong, especially if you own up to it. It's also okay to say, I don't know yet, let me get back to you. But as an expert, and remember, you are an expert, learn to speak with more authority and confidence. So we all have imposter syndrome, and learning to get past it is really helpful. But remember, do not let your imposter syndrome prevent you from getting hired. A statistic shows that men are often hired for their potential while women are hired for their experience, which leads to some unfortunate work statistics. Especially if you're a marginalized individual like myself, don't put yourself down when the odds are already stacked against you. I might not know all the necessary skills that a job may require before the job, but I can learn it. So don't let that hold you back when you know for sure that some mediocre guy out there is going to have all the confidence he doesn't deserve to take it and do it. Market yourself based off of your potential to get the job done, not on the experience of whether you've done that job already. The client doesn't have to know all the specifics, you just have to ensure that you can get the job done and meet their needs. But Chell, what if I'm such an imposter that I don't even deserve to have imposters? Shut the hell up, I will kick your ass. You have to love and respect yourself. I've heard people say this exact line, and you need to do better by yourself, because you deserve to be here. The idea of fake it till you make it, the more you lean into your aspirations, the truer they become. Imposter syndrome is hard, but it will come and go, and how you feel about yourself is not the same as how others feel about you. The best way to fight imposter syndrome is to just be learning and growing, because you're an expert, baby, and even if it feels fake, own that fake feeling and double down. Because we all feel fake. But in fighting that feeling by learning and growing, that's how we truly become the best versions of ourselves and how we actually beat it. Thank you for watching this video. Subscribe for more videos on building your career, as well as sign up for my newsletter where I talk about things in higher detail. Also, I read every comment and email, so if you have any questions or have any suggestions on topics you want me to cover, feel free to comment below. Thanks again, till next time, and good luck out there.